James Gunn has built his career on making misfits cool. From Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon to Peacemaker, Gunn's worlds are full of loud music, broken people, and heart-to-heart conversations. But here's the catch. Fans are starting to notice that every James Gunn story feels kind of the same. Now, don't get me wrong. Gunn's films are packed with charm, soul, and humor. He's one of the best at what he does. But whether it's Peacemaker or Guardians of the Galaxy, each project feels like a remixed version of the same emotional blueprint. If you haven't thought about it before, stick around, because today we're breaking down the one big problem with James Gunn's storytelling. His characters, arcs, and emotional beats are becoming formulaic, and that could spell trouble for his new DC universe. Let's dive in. Nearly every Gunn story starts with a team of outcasts, not just misfits, full-blown rejects that society has already given up on. You know the type. The broken woman hiding behind sarcasm, the killer with a conscience, and of course, the talking animal who ends up being more human than the humans. Sounds familiar? That's because it is. In Guardians of the Galaxy, we have Peter Quill, a self-absorbed man-child masking his trauma with jokes and 80s hits. Drax, the lovable idiot who's all brawn and no brain. Gamora, the cold assassin with a heart. Rocket, the angry abandoned genius. And Groot, the CGI mascot everyone adores, especially Baby Groot. Then came the Suicide Squad, and Gunn pretty much did it again. Peacemaker replaced Star-Lord as the reckless man-child. Harley Quinn and Harcourt filled the Gamora role. King Shark became Groot 2.0, and Polka Dot Man, another Gunn staple. The tragic weirdo with parental trauma. Maybe it's coincidence, but probably not. Peacemaker doubled down on this formula. The same character types, the same emotional beats, the same retro soundtrack. All too familiar. I've started to notice a repeating pattern in most of his work. Whether it's Creature Commandos, Peacemaker, or the Suicide Squad, it's always kind of the same formula. A team of misfits is brought together, usually people who have been through some tough or tragic stuff. They're seen as outcasts or losers and are tasked with solving a big problem. Gunn has said Peacemaker is his most personal work, and that's exactly where the issue lies. Every project he writes filtered through his own emotional shorthand. One of Gunn's go-to archetypes is the flamboyant, self-absorbed man-child who learns to care. First, there's Peter Quill, the immature goofball stuck in nostalgia and daddy issues. Then there's Peacemaker, a man so desperate for validation that he kills for peace. Both start as crude, emotionally stunted wrecks and eventually learn to care. Nearly all his movies are clones of Guardian of the Galaxy, I feel. It's a solid arc, broken men finding redemption through empathy. But when you use it over and over again, it loses power. It starts to feel like a template instead of a transformation. Even his Superman movie seems to lean this way. Clark Kent struggling to balance his double life, questioning his purpose, only to discover it through his father's words. That's not bad writing, but it's basically Star-Lord in a cape. The problem isn't that Gunn writes flawed heroes. That's actually his strength. The problem is that he writes the same ones. Next up, Gunn's tough woman with trauma archetype. Gamora in Guardians, Harcourt in Peacemaker, Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad, even Nebula and maybe Lois. They're all emotionally guarded, hyper-competent, and hiding pain behind sarcasm. By the end, they all learn to trust the messy, immature men they once despised. Sure, it works. Strong women softening the flawed men around them in a time-tested formula. But when every dynamic follows the same emotional arc, the characters blur together. Harcourt isn't Harcourt anymore. She's Gamora with a different origin. Now that Gunn is here, he hasn't exactly earned everyone's trust, especially through his constant use of ambiguous statements that leads to arguments between DC fans, coupled with his excessive use of crude, oftentimes unfunny humor and repetitive themes across his movies has different DC factions/groups against him. Every Gunn team needs one thing: a lovable idiot. Drax, King Shark, Vigilante, even Weasel. They exist to break tension with absurdity, and it works, in moderation. But Gunn's tendency to undercut serious scenes with jokes has become predictable. Drax's literal humor was hilarious in Guardians 1 because it was fresh, but by Guardians 3 and Peacemaker, that rhythm felt tired. Every emotional scene got interrupted by a gag, dulling the impact. He really needs to be used correctly to be funny. His "Why is Gamora" is one of the funniest lines in the movie. His invisibility gag was really lame. Also, I really disliked him in Volume 2. His laughing gag got really tired, and I hope that's not further used in Volume 3. This style traces back to Gunn's roots in trauma films, where shock humor was the norm. But when every heavy moment ends with a punchline, that emotional rhythm becomes fatigue, not fun. Gunn loves his CGI mascots: Groot, Rocket, King Shark, Eagle-Eye, and even Crypto. They're cute, funny, and great for merch, but they all serve the same emotional purpose. Rocket's trauma arc in Guardians 3 was genuinely powerful, one of the MCU's best, but when every story leans on a CGI creature to carry the emotional weight, it starts to feel like a crutch. Gunn's tone is his biggest strength, and his biggest limit. He's a master of crude humor meets raw sincerity, able to make you laugh 1 second and cry the next. But when every story uses the same rhythm of sarcasm, redemption, and tears, it loses impact. By Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, fans praised the emotion, but admitted it all felt familiar. Not bad, just safe. And that's exactly why fans worry about the upcoming DCU. Now, Gunn isn't just directing, he's building an entire universe. And that's where repetition becomes a real problem. If every DC project feels like Guardians of the Galaxy, fans will burn out fast. Some already are, especially with his tone in Superman Legacy. But those were basically all irreverent, silly characters, so it fit. They aren't Superman. The opening scene being Superman beat up and having to deal with a disobedient dog was silly, but just not the way you want to be introduced to Superman. So what's the fix? Gunn needs to step back, not away, but back. He shouldn't write everything himself. Let other creatives define corners of the DCU. Give Batman and Wonder Woman their own tonal space. He can guide the ship without captaining every scene. That's how the new DCU can feel diverse, fresh, and alive. So what do you think? Is James Gunn remixing his old movies under new labels? Or can he truly create something fresh for the DC universe? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to Silver Screen Hero, and for more superhero breakdowns and deep dives, check out the next video here.